The city shimmered like a jewel under the cloak of night, every skyscraper lit with golden fire that pierced the velvet darkness. From the glass windows of the tallest tower, the heartbeat of the metropolis pulsed loud and alive, horns blaring in the distance, the hum of laughter spilling from bars, the soft echo of footsteps against marble sidewalks. Inside one of those bars, tucked away in the heart of downtown, the air carried a different weight. Rich mahogany lined the walls, chandeliers dripped with crystals that fractured the light into sharp, glimmering fragments, and a jazz band played something sultry in the corner. It was a sanctuary built for the powerful, for those who ruled the city's empires with a single phone call. Alexander Drake sat alone at a private table, the dark amber in his glass catching the light as he swirled it slowly. His tailored black suit framed a body that radiated dominance, every inch of him carved in sharp, precise control. His piercing gray eyes surveyed the room without interest. He had been here 1,000 times before. Deals were struck here, fortunes exchanged, women approached him with smiles that never reached their eyes. He had never chased, never needed to. Love was a distraction, one he had no time for. Alexander Drake's world was built on empires, numbers, and absolute control. But tonight, something was different. A restlessness gnawed at him, an emptiness that no amount of whiskey could dull. Then she walked in. Emma Hayes hesitated at the entrance, her breath catching as her gaze swept across the opulent space. She had never stepped foot in a place like this. Her life was built on scraped-together paychecks, nights of exhaustion, and dreams she could never quite afford. The black dress she wore clung to her just enough to draw eyes. Though she hadn't bought it for attention, it was borrowed, chosen to help her blend in to a world that didn't belong to her. She tucked a strand of dark brown hair nervously behind her ear, hazel eyes searching for a corner where she could disappear. But there was no disappearing here. Alexander saw her the moment she entered. The shift in the room was subtle, but he felt it like a jolt straight through his veins. She didn't belong among the polished diamonds and silk ties. That was what made her impossible to ignore. Innocence clung to her like a second skin, untainted by greed, untouched by the shallow hunger of this world. For the first time in years, his gaze locked on someone and didn't let go. Emma's eyes met his across the room. The moment stretched, far too long to be accidental. His stare burned into her, sharp and unrelenting, sending heat flooding through her cheeks. Her heart stumbled in her chest, and she looked away quickly, as if the force of his attention had threatened to unravel her. She slid onto a stool at the far end of the bar, her hands fidgeting with the edge of her dress as she ordered something simple, hoping to vanish into the hum of the night. But Alexander Drake was not a man to ignore instinct. He rose from his seat with the kind of authority that turned heads even when he didn't mean to, his tall frame cutting through the glow of golden light. He moved with precision, like a predator crossing into unfamiliar territory, drawn by something he couldn't name. His glass was left behind, forgotten. All that mattered now was the girl who had shifted the very ground beneath him with nothing more than a glance. Emma felt him before she saw him, the air tightening as his shadow fell over her. She turned, and there he was, closer now, devastatingly handsome, his jawline cut sharp as stone, his presence overwhelming. "You don't seem like the type to drink alone in a place like this," he murmured, his deep voice smooth as silk, yet carrying the kind of authority that made her pulse stutter. Emma blinked up at him, her breath catching under the weight of his gaze. She steadied herself, clinging to the fragments of her courage. "And you don't seem like the type to strike up conversations with strangers," she countered softly, her voice carrying a quiet strength that startled even her. For the first time in years, Alexander Drake felt the ghost of a smile curve his lips. Maybe tonight wasn't going to be like the others. Maybe tonight was the beginning of something he hadn't even known he was searching for. Fate had just walked through the door, and he wasn't about to let her slip away. The air between them pulsed with something Emma could not explain, her skin prickling as though his gaze had branded her before he even touched her. Alexander leaned a fraction closer, his presence surrounding her like heat in a storm. The scent of whiskey and cedar clung to him, sharp, powerful, dangerous. Emma tried to steady her breath. She reminded herself she did not belong here. She had no business speaking to a man like this yet. The words slipped from her lips before she could stop them. "You should probably go back to your table," she whispered. "I am not looking for company." Alexander tilted his head, studying her as if she were a puzzle only he had the right to solve, his voice lowered, carrying the weight of command. "I did not come here tonight to be alone anymore, and something tells me you did not either." Her heart jolted at the accuracy of his words. He had pierced through her defenses with ease, and that terrified her. Emma opened her mouth to argue, but he raised a hand, signaling the bartender. A second glass was set down in front of her. Without her asking, she stared at it, then at him, suspicion flickering in her hazel eyes. "Why are you doing this?" Because Alexander murmured, his voice smooth, but charged with an edge that made her spine tingle. "There is something about you that does not let me look away." Emma's pulse quickened. She had never been looked at this way, as though her very existence had unsettled a man who seemed carved from control. She forced a shaky smile, but the truth was spilling from her voice. "This is not really my world. I should not even be here." "Exactly," he said, leaning in closer, his gray eyes locking with hers. "That is why you caught my attention. You are not like them, Emma. You are real." The sound of her name on his lips startled her. She had never told him. She swallowed hard, whispering, "How do you know my name?" Alexander smirked, his voice dropping lower. "I make it my business to know the things I want." Her chest tightened at his words, the power in them, the certainty as though she was already his, before she had even agreed to another moment by his side. Everything in her screamed to walk away, to put distance between herself and this man who radiated danger, but her body betrayed her, craving the intensity that burned in his gaze. "Come with me," he said suddenly, his tone carrying no hesitation. Emma blinked, her voice shaky. "Where? My place." His words came husky with unspoken promises. Just one night. The world seemed to tilt around her. One night, the temptation dangled like fire, calling her closer. She knew she should refuse, but her lips parted on their own, and in that instant she saw something flicker in his eyes. Hunger, yes, but also something darker, something possessive. She whispered softly, "Why me?" Alexander leaned so close, his breath grazed her ear, sending a shiver through her, because he said with ruthless certainty, "Once I see what I want, I never let it slip away." Her heart thundered as he extended his hand, waiting, daring her to take it, and with that simple gesture, Emma knew her life was about to change forever. The elevator ride to his penthouse was cloaked in silence, yet the air between them burned with a heat neither could ignore. Emma's heart hammered against her ribs. Each floor they passed felt like a step deeper into a world she did not understand, a world ruled by the man beside her. Alexander stood tall, his jaw tight, his eyes locked forward as though he was holding himself back from reaching for her before the doors even opened. When they slid apart, the view stole her breath. The penthouse sprawled across the top floor like a palace. Walls of glass revealed the city glittering beneath them, lights shimmering like 1,000 stars within reach. But Emma barely noticed, because the moment the door closed, Alexander turned his gaze on her, and she felt the weight of it in her bones. "You do not belong here," he said softly, stepping closer, "but tonight, you are mine." Emma's lips parted, her body frozen as he moved into her space, his hand lifted, brushing a strand of hair from her face. His touch was warm yet trembling with restraint. She felt her knees weaken when his thumb lingered against her cheekbone as though he was memorizing the shape of her. She whispered, "I should not be here," her voice breaking with uncertainty. Alexander's smirk curved, dangerous and unrelenting. "Maybe not, but I am not letting you leave." He lowered his head until his lips hovered just above hers. "Tell me you want this. Tell me you want me." The demand seared through her blood. She had never been so close to losing control. She whispered, "I do." And the words shattered whatever restraint he had left. His mouth claimed hers with a force that stole her breath. The kiss was deep, raw, desperate, as though years of hunger had been unleashed in one moment. His hands slid along her waist, pulling her flush against him. His touch burned like fire, searing every inch of her. Emma's head spun, her body trembling under the weight of his passion. She had never known a kiss could unravel her so completely. She clung to him, her hands gripping the fabric of his suit as though it was the only thing anchoring her. But when his lips left hers and began trailing down her neck, when his hand tugged at the zipper of her dress, Fear surged through her chest. She stiffened her breath, catching sharply. Alexander froze instantly, his eyes snapping to hers, sharp with awareness. "What is it?" Emma's cheeks burned with shame, her voice barely audible. "I have never before." His expression shifted, shock flickered, then something darker. His eyes blazing with a fierce possessiveness. He drew in a sharp breath, his voice rough. "You are a virgin." She nodded, tears threatening at the edges of her lashes, expecting him to recoil, to dismiss her, but instead his hand cupped her face with a gentleness that broke her heart. "You should have told me," he whispered. "I thought it did not matter," she admitted. "It matters more than you know," he rasped, pressing his forehead to hers, his chest rising and falling like he was fighting to contain himself. "I could take you right now, I could ruin you, but I will not, unless you are sure." Emma's heart thundered. She searched his eyes and found no mockery, no cold indifference, only raw truth burning there. She swallowed hard. "I am sure," she whispered. That was all it took. The last thread of his control snapped. He kissed her again, but slower this time. Worshipful, every touch, deliberate, every movement meant to make her feel not like a conquest, but like something precious. His hands trembled as they roamed her body, not with impatience, but reverence. Emma gasped, her heart soaring as heat spread through her. She felt the walls she had built around herself crumble as Alexander made her forget. Fear made her forget everything except the way he whispered her name, as though it was the only word he had ever wanted to say, and as he laid her down beneath him, his eyes locked on hers, filled with unrestrained devotion. Emma knew she had just given away something she could never take back, not just her first time, but her heart. The first rays of dawn crept through the floor-to-ceiling windows, painting the penthouse in a soft, golden glow. Emma stirred against the silk sheets, her body still trembling from the fire that had consumed her through the night. Alexander lay beside her, his arm draped across her waist, as though even in sleep he refused to let her go. His face, usually carved from steel, looked almost human now, softened by the vulnerability of slumber. For a moment, she allowed herself to breathe in the peace, her cheek resting against his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. But reality came crashing back. The moment she shifted, the man beside her was not just anyone. He was Alexander Drake, billionaire, ruthless, feared by all who crossed him. A man who had sworn he never allowed distractions, and yet he had claimed her with a hunger that left her both terrified and exhilarated. Emma tried to slip from the bed, but the grip on her waist tightened, pulling her back against him. "You are not leaving," he murmured, his voice still thick from sleep. Her breath caught Alexander. "I should go. I have work, bills, responsibilities." He opened his eyes and pinned her with a gaze that made her pulse stumble. "You belong here with me. Forget the rest." She shook her head, her heart racing. "You do not even know me." His lips curved into a dangerous smirk. "Then let us change that." He sat up, towering over her, his presence overwhelming. "You think last night was a mistake? It was not. It was only the beginning." Emma pulled the sheet tighter around herself, her voice unsteady. "I thought it was just one night. Not for me," he said firmly, his tone brooking no argument. "I do not share. I do not let go. You are mine now." Emma, fear and longing collided in her chest. The certainty in his words terrified her, but the heat in his eyes made her ache in ways she had never known before. She whispered, "You cannot just decide that." Alexander lay and closer, his hand cupping her chin, forcing her to meet his storm-gray gaze. "Watch me," he whispered. The silence that followed was thick, charged with something primal. She wanted to argue, wanted to push him away, but his thumb brushed over her lips, silencing her with a touch. "You gave me something no one else has," he said, his voice rough with an emotion he could not hide. "And I will never let anyone else take you from me." Her heart pounded as she searched his face, expecting arrogance, but finding something deeper, a flicker of vulnerability hidden beneath the possessiveness. Emma's phone buzzed on the nightstand, shattering the moment she reached for it. But Alexander was faster. He snatched it up, his jaw tightening at the sight of the screen. Overdue, notices, messages about rent past due. His eyes darkened with fury. "You are struggling," he said, his voice low, too calm. Emma flushed with embarrassment, snatching the phone back. "It is not your problem." It is now his tone, sharp and final. "You will not worry about bills or rent or anything else. Again, I will handle it." Tears stung her eyes. No one had ever said that to her before, but a spark of defiance flared in her chest. "Alexander, I cannot just let you take over my life." He pulled her against him, silencing her protest with a kiss that was both gentle and commanding. When he pulled back, his lips brushed her ear, his voice a whisper laced with possession. "No arguments, Emma. You are mine now, and I take care of what is mine." Her body trembled at the intensity of his vow. Part of her screamed to run, yet a stronger part ached to believe him. She had stepped into a world far beyond her reach. And now she realized Alexander Drake had no intention of letting her walk back out. The city buzzed beneath them, alive with energy, but inside Alexander's world, the air felt still, almost suffocating. Emma sat in the back of his sleek black car, the leather cool against her skin, as the driver wove through traffic. Alexander sat beside her, his arms stretched across the seat, his presence so commanding it filled every corner of the vehicle. She could feel his gaze even when she stared stubbornly out the window. He had insisted on driving her to work. Though Emma had protested that she could take the bus like always, Alexander had silenced her with a look, one sharp and unyielding, that made her pulse stutter. His word had been final, and now here she was, being escorted to her modest office in a car worth more than her yearly salary. "You do not need to keep working," he said suddenly, his voice low but edged with irritation. Emma turned sharply, her eyes flashing with quiet defiance. "I do need to. I cannot just sit in a penthouse living off you." His jaw tightened. He hated the thought of her struggling, of anyone seeing her as anything less than the woman who had undone him. But before he could argue, the car slowed, stopping in front of her office building. Alexander's eyes narrowed at the sight of the crumbling brick walls and flickering lights of the entrance. "This is where they expect you to work." Emma swallowed her embarrassment, her fingers twisting in her lap. "It is all I have." "Not anymore," he said flatly, his gaze sharp as steel. She opened her mouth to respond, but the driver had already stepped out, holding the door. Alexander followed, his hand on her waist, guiding her inside. She felt every pair of eyes in the lobby turn to them, whispers spreading like wildfire as the infamous Alexander Drake walked through the doors with a woman no one recognized. Emma's boss, Mr. Adler, rushed forward, his eyes wide with a forced smile. "Mr. Drake." What an unexpected surprise. Alexander's stare was cold, calculating. "Emma belongs to me now," he said simply, "and I do not want her wasting her time here." Emma's breath caught heat rushing to her cheeks. "Alexander, you cannot," Mr. Adler stammered, clearly terrified of offending the billionaire. "Boo, we value Emma. She is one of our best employees." Alexander cut him off, his tone lethal. "Then prove it. Increase her salary, triple her position, something worthy of her, or I take her away from this place forever." The silence that followed was deafening. Emma's heart raced, torn between humiliation and awe. No one had ever fought for her like this, but no one had ever tried to control her so completely either. She pulled Alexander aside, her voice sharp. "You cannot just walk into my life and take over like this." He leaned down, his lips close to her ear, his whisper dark and possessive. "I already have, Emma. You gave yourself to me, and I will not let you live like this anymore." Her knees weakened at the intensity of his words, but her heart pounded with fear and longing tangled together. She had stepped into his world, and now the line between desire and danger blurred with every breath. As Alexander led her back toward the waiting car, she realized something chilling. He was not just pulling her closer to him, he was pulling her deeper into a life she might never escape. And though every instinct told her to run, her body craved the fire only he could give her. The days that followed blurred into a whirlwind of luxury and dominance. Alexander refused to let Emma slip back into her old world. He flooded her life with extravagance. Expensive dresses appeared in her closet. Dinners were arranged at restaurants where the waiters bowed at his presence. Even the smallest details of her life were touched by him, as if he was determined to erase every trace of struggle she had ever known. But the more he gave, the more Emma felt the invisible chains tightening around her. She could not move without him knowing. She could not breathe without feeling the shadow of his control. He demanded she call him when she left her apartment, when she arrived at work, when she came back to him at night. His voice in her ear was both her comfort and her prison. One evening, as she sat across from him at his dining table surrounded by glittering chandeliers and wine older than she was, Emma finally found the courage to speak, her voice trembling but firm. "Alexander, this is too much. You are suffocating me." The knife in his hand froze above his plate, his gray eyes lifted to hers, sharp and unreadable. "Suffocating you," he repeated slowly as if testing the word. She swallowed hard. "You are watching every step I take, every move I make. You do not trust me. You do not let me breathe." The silence stretched long and dangerous. Then Alexander set the knife down, his voice low and dark. "You think I do this because I do not trust you. I do this because I cannot bear the thought of losing you." Emma's chest tightened. His words burned through her, but they frightened her just as much. "You cannot control me, Alexander. I am not one of your business deals. I am not something you own." In a flash, he was out of his chair, his hands braced on either side of her as he leaned close, his breath hot against her ear. "You are wrong, Emma. You are everything I own, everything I need." Her heart pounded. She wanted to push him away, to fight back, but when she looked into his eyes, she saw not just obsession, she saw fear, a fear so raw it cracked through his ruthless facade. "Tell me the truth," he whispered, his voice rough and unsteady. "Do you regret last night? Do you regret giving yourself to me?" Emma's throat tightened, tears stinging her eyes. "No," she whispered honestly. "I do not regret it." A sound escaped him, half a growl, half a sigh of relief. His forehead pressed against hers. "Then do not ask me to let go, because I do not know how." Her body trembled under the intensity of his confession. For the first time she saw Alexander Drake, not as the billionaire who owned everything, but as a man on the edge of losing control. But even as his arms wrapped around her, pulling her against his chest, a storm raged inside her. She was falling deeper into him every day. Yet part of her whispered that once she crossed this line, there would be no turning back, and no escape from the man who had already marked her as his forever. The storm broke on a night when Emma thought she could finally breathe. She had left Alexander's penthouse early, slipping out with the excuse of needing fresh air. Her heart ached with the weight of his obsession and her own growing feelings. She needed space to remember who she was before him, but fate had other plans. She found herself walking into a charity gala downtown, the invitation a gift from a colleague who had hoped she might network for her small design work. She wore a simple dress, nothing like the jewels Alexander had showered her with. She wanted to feel like herself again. Ordinary, unremarkable, free. The moment she stepped into the ballroom, she felt eyes on her. The glittering crowd parted, whispers trailing in her wake, and then she saw why Alexander was already there, towering in his tailored suit. The image of power, his storm, gray eyes finding her instantly, the fury in them hidden behind a smile that chilled her blood. Emma's breath caught. She had not told him she was coming here yet. Somehow he was here already, waiting, or maybe watching. His gaze cut through the crowd, burning into her as if daring her to move away. Before she could react, another figure approached, a tall, elegant woman draped in diamonds. Her lips curved into a cruel smile. She looked Emma up and down as though she were something unworthy on the floor. "So this is her," she purred to Alexander. "The little nobody who caught your attention." Emma's chest tightened, shame flooding her, but Alexander's jaw flexed. His hand shot out, grabbing Emma's waist, pulling her to his side, his voice cold and sharp enough to slice through the music. "Watch your mouth," he warned. "This woman is mine." Gasps rippled through the room. The elegant woman faltered, her smirk faltering under the weight of his words. Alexander had never made such a public claim before, never exposed his private desires to a crowd of predators who thrived on weakness, but tonight he did it for Emma. Emma's heart raced, torn between humiliation and something deeper. She wanted to pull away to escape the intensity of his hold, but the way he glared at the woman who had mocked her sent a shiver through her bones. He was ruthless, unrelenting, and in that moment he had chosen her above all else. The woman sneered and turned away, but the damage was done. Whispers spread like fire around the room. Alexander Drake had publicly claimed a woman who did not belong to his world. Emma's voice trembled as she whispered, "You should not have done that." Alexander lowered his head, his lips brushing her ear, his whisper laced with both danger and devotion. I would burn this city to the ground before I let anyone belittle you. Her body shook at the raw vow, his grip unyielding. The room spinning around her, she realized she was trapped not just in his arms, but in a love that was becoming more dangerous by the second. And as the music swelled and the crowd stared, she knew one terrifying truth. The deeper she fell into Alexander's world, the harder it would be to ever find her way out. The night after the gala, Emma could not silence the voices in her head, the whispers, the stares, the cruel smile of the woman who had mocked her. She lay in Alexander's bed, staring at the ceiling, her heart pounding with a storm of emotions. Part of her burned with shame, another part trembled with the memory of his public vow. He had chosen her before everyone else. Yet the weight of that choice terrified her. When Alexander returned from a late meeting, she was already dressed, her bag packed. His eyes darkened the moment he saw it. "What are you doing?" "I need space, Alexander," she whispered, her voice shaking. "I need to breathe." His jaw tightened, his steps slow, deliberate as he moved closer. "No, you do not need space, you need me." Emma shook her head, her throat tightening. "I cannot live like this. I cannot be watched every second, controlled every breath you take from me." His hand slammed against the doorframe beside her, making her flinch. His voice dropped into a low growl. "I cannot stop, Emma. I do not know how. Since the moment you walked into that bar, you have been in my blood." Tears blurred her vision. She tried to step past him, but he caught her wrist, his grip firm yet trembling with desperation. "Do not walk away from me. Tell me you do not feel this too. Tell me last night meant nothing." Emma's lips parted, but no words came. The truth was she did feel it. She felt it with every beat of her heart, but the intensity was consuming her. She managed to whisper, "I am afraid of you." The words cut through him like a blade. His grip loosened, his expression flickering with something she had never seen before, pain raw and unguarded. His voice cracked when he finally spoke. "Afraid of me?" Emma nodded, tears falling. "Alexander, I do not know who I am. When I am with you, I feel lost." He exhaled sharply, his hand trembling as he reached for her face, brushing away a tear. "I feel the same," he confessed, his voice broken. "Was a man who controlled everything but you. You undo me, and I cannot breathe without you." The vulnerability in his eyes silenced her. She had never seen Alexander Drake look like this, stripped of power, stripped of control, his entire world laid bare in front of her. Emma's heart ached. She wanted to believe him, but fear still clung to her chest. She pulled away, whispering, "I need time." Alexander's eyes darkened again, the storm returning, but instead of forcing her, he stepped back, his voice low and dangerous. "If you walk out that door, I will not stop you, but know this, Emma, wherever you go, I will find you." Her knees weakened at the promise in his tone. She stepped past him, her heart breaking with every step. Yet even as she left the penthouse, she knew she had not escaped him because Alexander Drake was not a man who let go, and deep down she feared she did not want him to. Emma thought leaving him would give her peace, but days stretched into nights, and instead of freedom she found only emptiness. She went back to her small apartment, the peeling paint, the pile of overdue bills, the silence pressing in like a weight. She told herself she had escaped his control, yet her heart betrayed her. Every sound on the street, every vibration of her phone. She hoped it would be him. Alexander did not call. He did not text for the first time since they met. He vanished, and the absence cut deeper than his presence ever had. Emma tried to work, but her hands trembled. She tried to sleep, but his voice haunted her. The memory of his touch burned through her dreams, until she woke with tears on her cheeks. Then one night, as rain lashed against her window, she heard the sound. A sleek black car pulled up outside her building. Her chest tightened, her body frozen. She told herself not to move, but when the knock came, she was already standing at the door. She opened it, and there he was, soaked from the storm. His gray eyes burning with a fire she had never seen before. He looked nothing like the untouchable billionaire the world feared. He looked undone. Emma's lips parted. "Alexander, what are you doing here?" He stepped inside without asking, his voice low but fierce. "I told you I would find you." Her heart raced. "You should not be here." He ignored her words, his hand trembling as he reached for her cheek. "I tried to stay away. I thought giving you space would make you happy, but I cannot. Emma, I cannot breathe without you." Tears welled in her eyes, her voice breaking. "Then, why did you let me go?" Because he said, his jaw tightening. If I had held you, you would have hated me, and I would rather lose you than destroy you. Her knees weakened, his confession tearing through her defenses. She had never heard him sound so raw, so human. She whispered, Alexander, I do not know how to do this. Neither do I. He demitted, his forehead pressing to hers. But I know one thing, I cannot live in a world where you are not mine. Before she could answer, he dropped to his knees in front of her. Her breath caught as the man who commanded empires knelt on the worn floor of her tiny apartment, his eyes burning with desperation. Marry me, Emma. The words crashed through her like thunder, her entire body trembling. She stared down at him, unable to speak. He held her hand against his lips, his voice breaking. I will not promise perfection. I will not promise control. But I swear, you will never be alone again. I will fight for you until my last breath. Emma's tears spilled down her cheeks, the room spinning with the weight of his vow. Part of her screamed, this was too fast, too dangerous. But another part whispered, this was fate. This was love she had never known. Her lips trembled. Alexander Verse, his grip tightened, his eyes pleading. Say yes, Emma, say you are mine forever. The storm raged outside, lightning flashing against the glass. But the true storm was in her heart. She had been running from him, running from the fire that consumed them both. And now she realized she could never escape it. Emma drew a shaky breath, her voice breaking into the night. Yes, Alexander, yes. His exhale was sharp, like a man dragged back from the edge of death. He pulled her into his arms, kissing her with a desperation that stole the air from her lungs. And in that moment, Emma knew there was no turning back. Her first time had bound her to a man who would never let her go, and now with a single word she had bound herself to him forever. The morning after his proposal, Emma woke in Alexander's arms, his body wrapped tightly around hers as though even in sleep he feared she might slip away. Her eyes burned with tears as she realized the truth of what she had done. She had said yes to the man the world called ruthless, to the man who had shaken her life to its foundation, and she had meant it. The city outside was alive with its usual noise. But inside Alexander's penthouse, there was only silence, a silence filled with anticipation. Emma sat at the window, wrapped in his shirt, staring at the skyline, her mind racing. She thought of the girl she had been only weeks ago, scraping by, clinging to her independence. And then she thought of the man who had stormed into her life and claimed her so completely. When Alexander stirred, his gray eyes opened sharp and alert the moment they found her. He was already rising, crossing the room with that commanding stride, his hand lifted to her cheek, tilting her face up to his voice rough with emotion. You are mine now, do you understand that? Emma's heart thundered as she whispered, I do, but I need you to promise me something. Alexander, I need to know that I will not lose myself inside your world. He paused, his jaw tight, then slowly he nodded, his hand sliding into hers. I cannot promise I will not be possessive. I cannot promise I will not fight to keep you, but I swear I will never break you. I will never let anyone else own a piece of you. Not even fear. The vow shivered through her bones. It was not perfect, it was not safe, but it was real, and her lips curved into a trembling smile. Then let us not waste time. His brows lifted. What are you saying? I am saying, Emma whispered, pressing her forehead against his. Let us get married now before either of us has the chance to run. That evening, the world of Alexander Drake shifted forever. The grand ballroom of the city's most luxurious hotel glowed with golden light, chandeliers blazing white roses cascading from every corner. Emma walked down the aisle in a gown that shimmered like starlight. Her hazel eyes locked on his, and for the first time Alexander's heart pounded, not from business, not from power, but from love. When the officiant spoke, Alexander's voice cut through the air, strong and unshakable. I take you, Emma, not for one night. Not for a season, but for every day until my last. You are my world, my heart, my reason. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she whispered her vows. I take you, Alexander, not for your wealth, not for your empire, but for the man you are when you hold me. The man who swore I would never be alone again. You are my forever. The words that sealed them as husband and wife sent the crowd into applause, but Alexander did not wait. He pulled her into his arms, kissing her as though the world had ended and begun again in her. That night in the honeymoon suite, he carried her across the threshold, his lips trailing fire across her skin, his voice a growl against her ear. You gave me your first night. Emma and I will spend every night proving I was worthy of it. She melted into him, every touch, every whispered vow, binding them tighter than any contract ever could. When dawn broke, she lay in his arms, breathless, her body aching with the proof of his devotion, his eyes soft and unguarded as he whispered the words that made her heart stop. I never planned for this, but the moment I touched you, I knew one night would never be enough. I wanted forever. Emma pressed her lips to his chest, her tears soaking his skin, and for the first time she did not feel fear. She felt home. Years later, Alexander watched from the garden of their villa. Emma sat beneath the sun, their daughter nestled in her lap, laughter ringing through the air. His empire still thrived, his power still reigned, but none of it mattered compared to the sight before him. He walked to them, pressing a kiss to Emma's lips. His voice, a low murmur. Forever was never long enough, and she smiled back because she knew the truth. Her first time had given her a love that would last a lifetime and beyond.